know the weather has been crazy from cold to hot and back. But yeah, I'm very excited to be here and talk about art collecting. And I think one of the things that is always very inspiring is to hear stories from other collectors. One of my biggest motivations and missions with Math 54 is to encourage people to start buying art. And I think it always helps to hear other people's stories and their journeys. And I think that one of the questions that I hear more often is, where do I even start? And I think there's a book called How to Start Collecting Art by Magnus Resch, and he talks about horizontal versus vertical buying, and I think that's a good kind of starting point. So the idea of having this kind of topic as the main focus of the conversation stems from conversations that I've had with these wonderful people. I'm very lucky to be in the presence of experts that all can offer different insights from a gallerist, collector, but also artist, collector, but also patron and advocate for Latinx artists. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves so that they can do better justice at explaining what kind of role they play in the art world. So we can start with Rain.
Okay. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. My name is Rain Liu. I'm from China. I came to New York in 2017. So before I came to New York, I was running my own gallery in the city of Chengdu in China for about 6-7 years. And then there was a lot of things going on, like a lot of cultural art exchange between China and US back then. And I was thinking, maybe I can just come to New York and see what's going on and how everyone's doing, how the art world, how art system is doing in New York. So I temporarily closed the space in China, just come here, see what's going on, and thought maybe I can just go back after a year or two. But then I stayed. And then last year in September, I opened the physical space of my gallery in Chinatown, Tribeca, that area. Yeah, so now I can continue to work with emerging artists. So yeah, this is where I am. Nice to meet you all here.
Hi, Leslie Weissman. I'm a collector with my husband Michael and our family, an artist, independent curator, advocate for getting emerging and early mid-career artists out into the world, connected with galleries, connected with patrons and museums, whatever it takes to get the work out into the wild, as one of my artist friends sent me a text about today. And I think I have a unique perspective on that because I see it from the collecting side, and I also get to see it from the art side, and sort of knowing the personal background of making your work, coming up with your own practice, your own mission, and communicating your story to the world is important. And then on the flip side, being able to work with artists and get their work out into the world, into hands of people that will appreciate it and view it and live with it. And so this is the third pop-up that I've done, and I co-curated it with my friend and fellow artist Charlotte Hailstone. This one specifically was to promote women in the arts. So we've got about 30 female identifying artists in our presentation, and we were thrilled that Hall had us as a part of this. And that's sort of the background. I'm sure we'll get into some more of the collecting strategies.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me, by the way. It's great to see Al back there. So I'm a collector, basically. So, wow. I tell you my background. I guess we can talk more later. But I'm half Puerto Rican, half Dominican. I was born in Harlem. And moved to when I was 5, moved to Puerto Rico. Came back to Washington Heights, 14. When I was 14, and then was in New York ever since. Moved to Connecticut now. I'm in Connecticut now. Alice built my house. And basically, I always loved art. Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to have a mural in the White House. Of course, it's not there, but anyway, at least in my head it was going to be. But so I was obsessed with art, and then as I got older, I stopped, I guess, actually painting and drawing. I still want to do it again soon, hopefully. But anyway, I always loved art. And my mother, who passed away in 2013, she was the one who really took me to museums in Puerto Rico, in Ponce, the Ponce Museum, and in New York, the Met, the MoMA, the Whitney, El Museo del Barrio, and so on. And before I started collecting when she passed away. I don't know why, but something kicked in my brain. I want to start collecting in 2013, 14. And prior to that, I had no clue about contemporary world. I was obsessed with, which I call now all the white men, basically. Anyway, the art world, right? Picasso, Van Gogh, Raphael, Michelangelo, Bacon, blah, blah. And in my mind, I pretty much stopped in the 80s. I had no clue after Andy Warhol. And then, so when I started collecting in 2013, I bought 2 prints, Jasper John and Jim Dine. That's all that I knew. I love them, whatever. And then somebody said, Rich, if you want to get serious, get original works, quote unquote, as compared to prints. I guess N of 1, instead of multiple works. But anyway, so then I was looking for somebody who looked like me, and I learned about Angel Otero. So I called one gallery that represented him, and pretty much they hung up on me. And then I called the other gallery, totally different, interaction with the owner, and I ended up going to Angel's studio. I got works from him, and then I started collecting. And basically since then, it's been incredible. So I don't know why, but since I started collecting, instead of dealing with their artists like I was before collecting, I wanted to meet artists themselves. So I was always making a point. I still do, trying to go to the studio, get to know them. I buy their works if I like the person, hopefully, and I try to help their careers. One thing that I realized, luckily for me, I work for a big company now that I grew with the company, and I have great benefits. So one thing that I realized is artists are more like contractors. So I always try to hook them up with accountants, financial advisors, even try to get healthcare for them. Whatever, just try to, make their careers better and don't have to worry so much about what to do with their money once they earn it. And luckily also I've been associated with museums, trustee at the Bronx Museum. Sadly, I couldn't do it anymore, so I had to stop in December. I did 1 year acquisition committee at El Museo del Barrio, and now I'm at up to 5 committees, 3 committees and subcommittees at MoMA right now, which is a dream. Anyway, I love the art world. I love artists. I love galleries. I love museums. So I try to do as much as I can in my spare time. Anyway.
Thank you everyone. I think that when I heard Richard's story about how this specific moment in his life kind of prompted him to start collecting, was really inspiring because he said his mom was teaching him the world of the arts, and then once she passed, that's when he really started to get serious about it, kind of like in honor to her.
Maybe to stay in touch with her.
Maybe. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to know how you guys got started, because that was a very clear moment in time. But for some other people, it's maybe a little bit less. From one day to the other, it's a little bit more of a journey. How did it start for you?
So about 20 or so years ago, Michael and I were looking at a piece of work in his parents' home. They collected a few works here and there. I had an art background, and there was one work that we quite liked and reached out to the gallery that represented the artist, D.C. Moore, and we came in, saw works in a show that the artist was in, acquired the work, and then we sort of got a little bit of a bug about it and kept kind of going out and looking and a little bit here and there, and never really had a plan per se that we were going to collect. It was very organic and natural, and it really from the get-go was going out to galleries. We're very conscious of the entire ecosystem of art, so we like to really make sure that it's the gallery to the artist, whether it's from a residency or a gallery, but always including all the people that have before us supported the artist. And so we will do studio visits with the galleries, we go to shows, and it just kind of built from there. And I think, as you know, because you know one of our sons and his collection, our whole family is now grown to be a part of the collecting process. So every time we get a PDF or are considering adding a work, We now include our whole family in a group chat where we can and where we have the time to do it. Sometimes we have to make the quick decision, but we send it out to the whole family. We ask everybody, including girlfriends and now spouses, to weigh in on their top 3. Almost 99% of the time, there are 2 that overlap, and those are the ones that we choose from. So it's really also for us incredibly personal because we can include our family, and because of the way our home is installed, we absolutely live amongst our art. We have hundreds of pieces installed in the house in a salon style setting. So when we have the kids up and their spouses and girlfriends, it really does feel like they have a connection, which is really important in terms of keeping our house a home. And just one other thing is, for us, you had said that it helps if they're good people and the artists. And so that's also really important for us to really get to know the artists whose work we collect and have a relationship with them, because they are such an important part of our history and time wherever we are. All of those Renaissance and Rococo and traditional artists to today's emerging artists, they're documenting things that are so important to our humanity, and they're leaving a pictorial representation. So it's so interesting and important to us as collectors to know what it is they're trying to communicate and tell us, because there's all elements within their work of things that we can relate to and share and build upon for all of us, no matter what identity group they're in. There are things that we can all relate to. So I think that's really important, and there are things in all of that that each one of the members of our family has related to, and then we can tell the story about the art to the people that come to our home, which is incredibly an open door policy. So literally anybody can call us and say, we'd like to come over and take a look-see. So that's a little bit how we got started.
That's beautiful. I'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
I want to go too.
And now I'm curious. I mean, you started a gallery in China, and what I know is that you started representing, or you started working with contemporary Chinese artists back then. And then how has that evolved from, moving to New York? We had a conversation about a specific topic, but we can talk more about that later.
Sure, yeah. So my dad, he is an art historian and writer, curator. So I was born in the 80s. So I grew up watching him work with artists of his generation. And also in the 80s and 90s in China, there are not many publications about, say, art history, Western art history. So my dad back then, he was translating a lot of books from English to Chinese and published them, so people can get more access to like art history related publication. And also in the 80s and 90s, artists of his generation, there were no art market in China in the 80s. Until in the 90s, when Western dealers or curators, gallery went into China, that's how they discover the Chinese artists and then bring them to, say, Venice Biennial, bring them to a bigger, larger international platform, and then people get to know about Chinese contemporary artists. So my dad, in his whole life, has been devoted his life working with artists of his generation and write about art history, write about Chinese art history. And one of the things very important and very influential to me is how the art is related to the time that we live in. Like, what is the context the art exists? So I think this really affect me how I look at the work of artists. I started the gallery, very fortunate, had this opportunity after I finished my study in Australia. I went back to my home city, started the gallery, start to work with emerging artists of my generation. I think that's the group of people that I can relate it to, the things we see, we observe, we think. And also back then, I didn't have any experience of how to running a gallery, but I just go visit artist studio, talk with them, So throughout that 6, 7 years, I really enjoy. Well, I need to think about art gallery is still a business. I need to learn how to run the business, but more importantly, I think artist is the most important the part in this whole system. So I really appreciate to build up the personal relationship with artists and learn about their practice, but also learn about the person because I think the person and the art they are connected. And then I came to New York. New York is just a crazy place, and there's so many things, so many different people in here, and people from all over the world. And this kind of diversity really make me stay, I think. So I see there's a lot of possibility here. So pandemic came, I stuck in New York, and when everything opened up a little bit by the end of 2020, I started to just reach out to artists, start to do the studio visit. And then slowly prepare to find a spot for my gallery. So continue what I did in China, working with emerging artists. So that's what I'm still doing. Discover new artists and learn about them, cultivate the relationship with them. And also I feel it's very, very important. Like, I think art is still the core, like whether buying art, collecting art, so what the work about, and then put them into what the context it is. So I think it's very, very important. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we see a little bit of a common thread here. Everybody is somehow relating our collecting to their families, right? So we have Richard with a mom, then we have husband and wife, and you have your connection with your father. But I want to talk a little bit about how I started collecting. And for me, it wasn't necessarily a family thing. It was more a friend thing. So I started, well, it was like technically my ex-boyfriend, but but it was more like an interest that I've always had. I've always been very curious about the visual arts. And then I started to realize, by a little bit of encouragement, like when you have someone in your life that collects, you kind of feel validated. You feel like, okay, maybe I can do that too. This person is my age, what's stopping me? And then I started to look into my circle of friends, and I realized that I know a lot of artists. So I started having conversations with them, and that was just something that was very inspiring. So, I have, you would call them ultra emerging artists that are friends of mine that I was able to acquire works directly from their studio. And then I started building my own collection. And then when I started building my own collection, I realized there was a common theme. It was mostly female artists. And it was not something that I did strategically or consciously. It was something that kind of happened naturally because I could connect to their work in a very natural way. And then, as time evolved, I started expanding the circle, but like the first male artists that I collected were Latinx or actually Mexican. I'm from Mexico. So now I think this brings us a little bit to the horizontal versus vertical buying. And horizontal buying means that you are not really picking artists or pieces based on a specific characteristic, so Magnus Resch. And then vertical means that you're focused in one specific type of art or a time period or even one specific artist, and then you build your collection that way. And I think, from my conversations, it's been really interesting because I noticed for me started as a vertical with female artists and then became very clear that it was also a lot of Latinx. And this is something that I've been discussing with Richard, which I think is something that he can tell us a little bit about because he's a huge advocate for Latinx artists. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your
So around half of my collection is Latinx artists, basically. I try to focus on Caribbean artists, but and I do some vertical also, meaning that if I love an artist, I try to get a few works at least. But I mean, I don't know. Lately, I've been like all over the place. I'm totally addicted to art, to collecting, of course, which is bad for me. And I always fall in love. I always fall in love with somebody for a week or two until the next person comes along. So, and lately, I don't care if you're from Mars. I mean, I just, if I really, really love a work, I just go after that person and their work. So I do try to focus on Latinx art, but I mean, I really don't care.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I'm curious
yeah.
why you think it's important to support these artists.
Oh
Because
well, I mean, well, because it's obvious. I mean, if you go to MoMA, if you go to the Met, if you go in museums, you do not see any Puerto Ricans or Dominicans or Cubans. Cubans you do, some on the walls. So the whole point, I hope, by me being at these institutions, I'm really trying to convince them that they should be acquiring, collectors that are not, European centric, basically. So that's why I guess I do hone in on that. But like I said, overall, I mean, if I love this artist, I don't care where the person is from, or just whatever. But I do, to be, I guess, to be true to myself, and I also think my mother. I try to stay focused on Hispanic, whatever you want to call it.
I think, I mean, what's really interesting, I mean, we know, I overheard Leslie say how many works they have. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm actually very curious to know if you see a common thread throughout the collection, or whether there have been some themes evolving throughout the years. Maybe like at some point you started, like, for me first it was female, then it became Latinx, and, I mean, I also buy anything that I fall in love with. And I think that's a common consensus here, that it's not a black and white, it's a spectrum. But we do have a little bit of a focus, but I'm
Well,
curious.
some people do focus on only.
That's true, but
so-
not us, because we
No.
are art lovers.
So
Well,
I would say I don't think we ever, said consciously we were going to go vertical on a specific area.
Just a question.
I will say that our number one is we have to love it, because we live with it. And so we definitely buy what we love as our underlying principle. We also do like to start working with artists when they're more in that sort of early emerging mid-career phase, and really get to develop a personal relationship, because that's part of the process. And as Richard was saying, adding works by that artist during different phases of their career, so that we can also keep track of the artist and the relationship, and then where they're going and what their hand has to say at different points in time.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of women artists when I've looked around, but we are fortunate that we have a lot of work. So I would say we have touched on quite a few different identity groups, but not necessarily deliberately. It's really just being an art addict and loving being surrounded by it, and knowing that by acquiring the art and putting it on the wall and having people be able to see it, that we're sharing it and sharing the story, and also having an impact on the artist's life. To your earlier point about artists, especially kind of coming out of graduate schools and having loans to pay back, not being told anything about healthcare, how to run a small business. Every artist is a small business person. And these are some really important life skills that don't necessarily get taught during the art programs. So being able to have an impact and know that buying a work, whether it's through a gallery or if an artist isn't yet represented through the artist directly, you're having the ability to make an impact on their life, and that actually feels really good and important. As a way, in a sense, of kind of giving back to a community that we do love and care about. And one other way that I'm able to do that along with Michael is we are very involved with Fountainhead Residency, where I have a board position and have for quite a few years. And a big portion of the artists and the way the residency is divided up is we do focus on specific groups. So that is one way where I can look at and help structure vertical involvement.
Now, from our conversation, I know that you like to champion artists that use untraditional medium. So could you tell us a little bit why you're interested in that?
Sure. So I remember, I think it was around 2013. I went to visit the art stage Singapore. I don't think the art fair still running right now, but anyway. So I bought a small sculpture piece by Chihiro Shota. So that was very like maybe 10-inch, 15-inch square cubic kind of sculpture, a very signature. There was a instrument wrapped around by the string. So I personally very also love music. So also I found there's a lot of artists like music is one of their very important inspiration. But I think people buy art for different reasons or purpose or missions. So if you buy a piece of art and then want hang them in the house, put them in the house, I think it can be any type of medium, any type of materials. And nowadays there's so many creative individuals. They use all kinds of things, all kinds of material in their practice. So I think when you encounter an art object, if it gives you a lot of space to expand your thoughts, your minds, or the way you look at art, I think it can be opened up a lot of possibility. What can be on your wall, what can be in your collections.
Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful, and I also think that it's sometimes I think harder as you are in the early stages of your collecting career to go for these non-traditional type of art, that is not a painting because it's very straightforward. You buy a painting, you put it on the wall, but what do you do with a sculpture? What do you do with something that's like, textile? What do you do with sort of different things? Do you think that it's maybe a little bit more challenging on the dealer side to sell this kind of piece?
Well, we have a textile work up on the wall over there, and we have
quite
a sculpture.
we have a sculpture up on the wall as well. So I mean, when we go to museum or galleries, most of the medium we see is paintings, and the hierarchy between medium, that's and a classic topic that have been discussed throughout the time. But I mean, now the space, the architecture become like all creative side become more creative, and with the technology, everything. So when people, especially for people start collecting, I think once you start it, just keep your mind open. Anything could be possible. It's not just canvas painting that can be put on the wall. And also, art is also very creative. And gallery, they have also their way of showing the way of presenting art. So just open the mind.
Which I think it leads to a nice final question. I don't know how we're on time. You say keep an open mind. That's a great, starting point to when you want to start collecting. Just keep an open mind. What would you recommend? It's a good advice for people who want to start collecting.
Love it.
I mean, whenever, guys. I don't know.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, of course. You have, financial issues, right? You cannot buy a Picasso, right? Maybe one person you can. But no, just follow your heart. I mean, I think, like you said before, I mean, I only buy stuff that I don't know why, that I really, really love. So just, follow that. And it's nice to develop a relationship with galleries, right? That's how, so yeah, be nice to galleries. And just go, and always go, just go to galleries and just meet them. And then, just because you see an art that you like someday, maybe you go back and see if you like another day, and talk to the galleries. When will be a show of the artist, or next time can you maybe do a studio visit, right? So, I mean, but that's really, I don't know. You can just start whenever. I mean, in my case, sadly, because my mother was the one that triggered it for me. But we live in Manhattan now. We live in Connecticut. So I have a bigger house, not bigger walls, so a lot more space now, I guess. But so that helped. But I don't know, just follow your heart, guys, and just walk around here. I mean, it's a lot of affordable art here, right? But the main thing is, just make connections. I mean, make connections, get to know the owners, the artists if you can, right? And don't rush it. Just please don't rush it, because some of you are going to buy something today, you might not like it in a week from now. So just really, really make sure that you really like the work before you pull that trigger. But anyway, it's a great thing to do. So it's a beautiful ecosystem, right? You get to meet great people. So I mean, anyway. I know you had a.
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question. So, other than residencies and galleries, how do you find emerging artists to collect? Because not everyone is in a residency or a gallery.
I mean, I think for us, a lot of it is talking to other collectors. I think the interesting thing about the art community is it is personal and professional. And so I think it is actually a very inclusive community where people are more than willing and enjoy actually sharing information about an artist they've just seen work by or inspired by. So I think there is a lot of sharing amongst kind of the collector base. I also think, and Michael and I have done this, is we'll have an artist friend and we'll spend the day with them and we'll go from studio to studio with that one friend to visit other artists that they're friends with and just kind of getting to know the artist that way. And I will say, in a lot of ways, we use social media.
Yeah.
You know, we definitely use Instagram. I think Instagram is the platform of communication and an expression within the art community. So I do think that it is a tool that is of the year 2024, and I think we can't dismiss that as a viable entity to.
You looked on LinkedIn for artists?
I have not found LinkedIn to be as, I think because Instagram is a visual platform and also being able to look at other friends of mine that like or comment on an artist's work. It's, again, another way for us to be able to send a message and say, oh, what do you think? What are you seeing here? Is this someone you think that we should reach out to? We really like what we're seeing. And another, I think, interesting piece of advice, especially for younger collectors, and a gallery director actually told our boys this: buy your peers.
Yeah.
It is very much a part of the ecosystem. Everyone's growing up together, just like we may have done in business when we all started out, and whatever it was that we were in, we were supporting our peers. And in collecting, those are your peers, and artists, as I said earlier, are in their own way creative entrepreneurs and small business people, and we all need to support that part of the ecosystem. So it's actually been nice, and I know for our boys, to be able to support their peers. They've actually started to grow up with them and have introduced their friends to those artists. So it has propagated other art into the world.
You're in New York?
We're based in New York and Westchester. Yeah.
A
We
second
have
about.
another question.
I just want to say
Oh,
quickly
yeah,
about
what-
Instagram.
yeah.
I mean, you have to get into Instagram. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I'm obsessed with it until like 2 o'clock in the morning every night.
Yeah.
So you basically, if you find somebody that, if I see an image that I love, I send
direct
send to
yeah.
friends or directly to the artist. But yeah, it's a way to. There's so much art.
Yeah.
There's so many. Sadly, there are too many artists to make a living. But there's so many. There's always somebody new, of course. So, highly recommend to look at Instagram, and at least you have a flavor of what you might like. So, getting back to what do people collect? I only collect paintings. I don't know. It's sad or whatever, but anyway, that's the only thing that my
Then you
mind
have to visit
can't
RAINRAIN
comprehend
Gallery.
anything. I never understand conceptual art. So for whatever reason, I stick to paintings, and that's my bread and butter. And I love Instagram, and I have to thank two people here. So when I started collecting, I have no clue about the art world, and luckily for me, I met Armando Uribe. It's a great owner from Latchkey Gallery. With their help and with their advice, I ended up buying really early, for example, Kennedy Yanko, Alex Gardner, anyway. Plus I have other works from her. Also Danny Baez. Danny Baez, another great inspiration and a good friend, and introduced me to a lot of people. So bottom line, yeah, when you want to collect, if you want to start collecting tomorrow, just try to meet people in the art world, and they will guide you. They will tell you, who's the hard artist or what gallery to go to and so on. So anyway.
I'd also like to think there are several artists that are part of the installation that are here today. Bouquet, Lauren, Charlotte, Larissa, Alexandra, and they are what makes it really fun and exciting for me and Michael. And so I want to thank them all as well for being here. And I just saw Devin Zimmerman, who is around the corner, and I'm now doing some work with Michael and I with the Guncourt Museum, and they are a museum that really showcases artists for a long period of time, and they currently have an Anthony Cudahy show up. And he's an artist that we
Yep.
met in New York when he was getting his MFA.
I went to his studio one time.
Yeah, we were able to collect his work
I wasn't able to.
very
Sadly,
early.
I know.
But and so it was nice now, fast forward 5 or 6 years from when we got the piece, being able to be up in the museum and have an involvement in the museum. This is the second big show that Devin has mounted from a New York artist. His last show was Ever Baldwin, and again, it was the way that we were able to meet Evan through another gallery where Aida was with me for my small sculpture show at Laura Marinaro. So these are all things that build on each other. And I will say, I understand the painting. I just did a small sculpture show with the purpose of being able to showcase other ways in which artists are working, and also working in a size, especially for people that live in apartments or in cities, or like the salon style idea, to be able to really acquire work that is of a size that they can install and don't have to think, does it fit over my couch, or is it, gonna go with my wallpaper? It's just put it up and collect it and put it on a shelf and enjoy living with it. And so I think by being able to show different size opportunities, it opens up collecting to a different group as well.
It's a wider audience. Yeah. We had a question here.
Hi, thanks very much for the panel. One thing that everybody talks about is getting to know the artist and that's very rewarding and supporting the artist. What's the extent of controversy of artists? Commissions, we buy a lot of work in bulk, and are lessons learned around the positive and negatives in that kind of relationship?
What was the question?
So I can read it. So I think the question is, when we've both talked about really getting to know the artist as part of our process in collecting, and to what extent, what does that entail?
And to what extent will you go to support?
Right. So I think I said earlier, for us, it's very much a belief in the entire ecosystem and making sure that everybody is supported. So where a gallery is affiliated with where an artist is affiliated with a gallery, it's always working through the gallery to support the artist and looking at that artist. Every show that they do, work that might come out of their studio, asking the gallery to keep us updated on the artist practice so that we can see work all along the way. There's never any kind of direct payment to the artist, but helping the artist, maybe advising them as to where there's a residency that might fit for them, where there's a museum, or connecting them with another like-minded artist, because I think having artists as part of a cohort group, so that if one artist is in a group show and they say, they hear from the curator, we're looking for other artists from the show, that they'll recommend somebody from their peer group or cohort group. So as a way of just making kind of sort of solidifying the connective tissue, rather than trying to do anything to hurdle over it. And again, that's why collecting multiple pieces over a period of time as well. Does that?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody have another question?
About buying direct from artists that don't have gallery representation, is that something you do? And if so, how do you find those artists?
Instagram.
Yeah.
I just reach out to them, but then if you can't help, tell gallery people about the artist, and hopefully some gallery will do a show with the artist.
Is that something that works?
Yeah, I mean, I do it all the time, yeah.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
So we will definitely support artists directly if they're unaffiliated with a gallery or in between galleries. And, just like everybody else that has a career, you do need to go from one level gallery to another, and sometimes a gallery closes for whatever reason. So Michael and I love working with artists to introduce them to galleries. I do spend a great deal of my day taking galleries, directors, owners to artist studios,
And I'm sure galleries are asking you, who have
and
you
I
seen?
will say that
Right?
we do get that question often.
Yeah,
Who have
yeah.
you seen that you think will fit with our program?
Yeah.
So it's sort of keeping that mental roster and making those connections. And I think that's actually happened for some of the artists in this presentation where we've been able to connect them with some galleries too that I know of already. So I think that's an important role. To the other point asked by the gentleman in the back about what else can you do to help an artist, I actually think your question was a good follow-up, in that one very important thing you can do is make sure that the artist is known to galleries where there might be a fit. Because galleries have millions of artists and we sort of know a silo, so this is a way for us to be able to kind of help them hone in. So I think collectors are very much an important part of that ecosystem.
Any other questions? I think then we can conclude that we should all collect art, support artists, and yeah, support the ecosystem. I think, like Leslie said, it's, the job of a gallery, like you might have artists who don't have a gallery yet, but the job of the gallery is to support their long-term careers. So you can acquire works from them directly, but then if you can help them get into the system, that's when you really help them to grow their long life career, right? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.